Welcome to the Unfiltered Show from the Score Studios. I'm Joseph Casciaro. That's Tyler MacKillop. Tyler, what's going on, man? What's new with you?
Back from NBA Summer League. I know that's for a lot of people that's already wrapped up, but that's first time doing it for me, which is very fun. Actually, favorite moment, I met Jack Galkey just in the, out in the, he wasn't in the stands, just in the concourse, and I wanted to chat with him, and he's like, "Do I know you?" And I said, "You do not know me, my friend." He's like, "Oh, I've seen you on Instagram and TikTok." Nice. I'm like, you know what? This rocks. So I got to chat with him for a little bit. I actually posted a couple clips on social from it, which was awesome. That was one of the best highlights of my young career so far, honestly. Summer League was great. Good time. Would have been better maybe if we weren't in an Olympic year, because Bronny might have been in the building. Well, Bronny was in the building, but LeBron wasn't.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say it would have been better if it wasn't 49 Celsius every day while we were there.
Yeah,
I don't want to be that. I've never been the guy that complains about weather, but good Lord. 49 Celsius is something else. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Somewhere between 110 and 120.
Oh, God.
It was pretty unbearable. You mentioned Bronny. I think we were both in the Thomas and Mack Center for Bronny's debut when the AC broke in the arena. So imagine the most packed game of Summer League on one of the hottest days literally in Vegas' history. In an arena with no air conditioning. It was hot. It was hot in there.
Honestly, as my first time being there, I would highly recommend it. Would be a good trip for anyone just as a fan to go check out some good basketball, get very close, and you're also in Vegas. You can have a good time, but it is the hottest time of the year, too, so that makes it a little bit tougher.
And meet people from the Score social media.
Yeah,
apparently. YouTube. Yeah. We're worldwide, man. We're worldwide. All right, Summer League, not what we're here to talk about today. The Olympic men's basketball tournament is. We previewed the tournament last week. We reconvene now with every team having played 2 games in the tournament. So I think what we'll do today is we'll talk about Team Canada, Team USA, and a little bit about the field. Now, for Canadian fans, the 24-year wait to watch the men's team in the Olympics has been worth it so far. 2 solid wins over Greece and Australia. What has impressed you most about the Canadians?
God, I think I'll immediately might go to RJ Barrett, but I've just been super, super impressed with Dylan Brooks and Lou Dort, especially with the fact that Jamal Murray's kind of coming off the bench right now. Their defensive play has been fantastic. I think Dort is shooting close to 40% from 3 right now. That's exactly what you need if you're going to keep Jamal Murray on the bench, and then just forcing a ton of turnovers against Australia. They had, I think, 18 turnovers in that game. I love the way that they're playing. I think we expected to get this in their guard play, which isn't super shocking, but I think I'm overly impressed with the way that Dort and even with Dort, and why am I blanking right now? Not Brooks. And Brooks have been. I love having Dylan Brooks on my team right now as opposed to going against him.
Oh yeah, it's great. And I think there was a bit of a surprise when Dort started the first game instead of Murray. Everyone thought, myself included, with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jamal Murray starting together, Canada had arguably the best backcourt in the tournament. Lo and behold, they're not starting together. Murray's off the bench, Dort starting. I then thought, okay, this is just because they're playing Greece and they want as many options and bodies as possible to throw at Giannis in that tournament opener. But they kept the same starting lineup against Australia. It worked wonders again, and I think it actually makes sense the more I think about it with, you've got Brooks and Dort both on the court. So you've got multiple big wing defenders to go against often the other team's best players. But because Dort is such an improved shooter, you also don't necessarily sacrifice spacing by not having Murray out there. And I know, some people have mentioned that the one thing would be good about having Murray out there, though, is that you'd have another ball handler if they do pressure Shai and get it out of his hands. But the way RJ's played, he's looked like a great secondary ball handler, creator, playmaker in this tournament. His numbers have been off the charts. Efficiency, passing, everything's been great. I mean, the numbers are right there for all to see. RJ, I just got to say, too, RJ coming home to Toronto and immediately just transforming into this hyper-efficient machine of consistency has been awesome to watch. I was one of his harshest critics as a Knick because he was productive in a way, but he was never efficient. You'd be hard-pressed to find any season he was efficient from any area of the court. Comes to Toronto, finds his, consistency, his efficiency, carries it over to Team Canada. But yeah, so that's all been great. And I really do like that they've won 2 games in 2 different ways. Each game was very different, right? You had the Greece game, where it's this dangerous team with a superstar and shooting around them, and they got into foul trouble, and they had to survive this late onslaught, and they do it. And then the second game, it's Shea in foul trouble, and they have a bit of an early hole. They're fighting from behind all first half. They win by double digits. So I've been impressed by their ability to win in different ways. That starting line at the defense you mentioned, and RJ.
Well, don't forget, this is kind of Canada's version of Carmelo Anthony. When you look at the fact that the Knicks get RJ Barrett, they think they're getting this player they're going to develop and to be able to be a superstar with them, and then also being able to represent his country, because Barrett was fantastic. And what was that? Their U19 or their U17?
When they won, yeah, they shot.
won it?
I believe they beat Zion-led USA for a gold at the
and
under
he was
19.
incredible.
Yeah.
And we all know Carmelo Anthony's reputation when it comes to the world stage, and RJ could maybe just be that guy, but instead of playing for the Knicks and representing the U.S., we've got a guy that's playing for the Toronto Raptors and representing Canada, which I love. So Barrett's been great.
Maple Mellow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing I like about it too is like, I feel like there's a little bit of demons being exercised here in the sense that for so long, those two games, these first two games, are the type of games Canada would have lost in basketball, even when the talent was there.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that it's been this long since they've been on this stage. Like, absolutely insane when you look at the quality of this team, which we'll get into as we talk about everybody else in the tournament. But I mean, for my money, this is easily the second best team in the world right now. I don't even think it's a conversation, to be completely honest with you.
I mean, I think we might have that conversation about Germany a little later in the show, but I think Canada's in the conversation for sure. And yeah, like I was saying, these are the games they would have lost, whether in qualifying tournaments or other tournaments over the years, even though they have the talent advantage. You know, they get in foul trouble and they lose the plot, or late in that game against Giannis with maybe the best player on the floor being on the other team and shooting around them, and they blow a late lead. And then they've just found a way to gut out the results so far in this tournament, and all the credit to them. They deserve it.
And SGA and RJ are playing, though, like they're the best players on the floor night in and night out. So that's something you couldn't always say about this country's top tier talent.
Yeah, and on that note, so Hoops Hype has this thing called the global ratings, and it's supposed to take into account box score stats, like individual box score stats, team performance, quality of opponent, all those things. And if you look at that metric for this tournament so far, I know it's only been a couple of games.
There you go.
You mentioned RJ and Shea. According to this Hoops Hype metric, global rating, have been the two best players in the tournament, and RJ number one. So, if someone had told you RJ Barrett was going to be the best player in this tournament, and Canada would have the two best players in this tournament, I think you'd be pretty good and happy with that and like Canada's chances. Now, of course, no team's perfect. Not even the mighty USA are perfect.
Oh,
so
God.
there's been moments of tension with Canada in these two games. I talked about it. What has concerned you most, or what has stood out to you as maybe something where you're like, that's the reason they won't actually win, though?
I'm not giving groundbreaking information to anybody when I say this, but I think we all know it's their ability to defend the rim and their length, and the fact that we're seeing Kem Birch playing. Obviously, it's great to see a guy like Kem Birch come off the bench and play really well, because their bench hasn't been great. Jamal Murray hasn't been great so far. But going to a guy like Kem Birch this early, and mind you, they've played their exhibition games. They're finding ways and finding the right rotation to be prepped. But seeing Kelly Olynyk on the bench and going to a guy like Kem Birch, you don't really love what Dwight Powell provides all across the floor. That's the biggest concern. And we'll probably, when you look at some of these potential teams that they play in a quarterfinal matchup, be it a Serbia or the potential of a France, that's where you raise concerns. But again, this team also proved, Serbia has a similar type of makeup to a team like Greece, where they're going to play everything through Jokic, like we saw Greece play everything through Giannis, that they still were able to find ways to defend. And it's interesting because you got a guy like Nickeil Alexander-Walker who hasn't really provided much. But when you look at what the Timberwolves did defensively and having answers for Jokic, and especially early in that playoff series, I wonder if that might come into play and if that's something that they discuss if they ultimately run into that type of matchup. But again, biggest concern to me is the ability to defend the rim. Yeah,
the lack of quality among their bigs. When you're looking at, Powell, Lyles, Olynyk, and Birch, like you mentioned, it's great that Birch came on, probably usurped Olynyk, and
which is not a good. I don't think it's a good thing
in the rotation. No, it's not. If he's your second best big after Dwight Powell, it's slim pickings here for Canada. I agree with you. That's the biggest concern. The bench, and more so Jamal Murray, I think, is a big concern. So again, it's 2 games, small sample size, but a tournament is short. One bad game and your tournament could be done once the knockouts comes. We've got Jamal Murray's numbers here on the screen. It's been tough sledding for him so far. And I think the disappointing thing is, we talked about that surprise starting lineup. Well, part of the benefit of it was supposed to be, hey, you got Jamal Murray coming off the bench. He should be able to carry bench units in an international tournament where he should be, other than in matchups against the U.S., the best player from either bench in the game. He has not looked it so far. And that's dragged the entire bench down. Now, that's a little bit on Nembhard. That's a little bit on Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who's been slumping since the conference finals in the, against Dallas.
And that's a problem because you don't see a lot of these other countries with the that are afforded the opportunity to have these type of players come off the bench.
Right.
So, again, it hasn't been a problem yet, but you really need to take advantage of that, especially as you get to. Obviously, Game 3 here is meaningful, but it isn't one that's going to make or break the tournament for them. But you'd like to see these guys start to prove their worth when it comes to getting into this eventual quarterfinal matchup too.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the last thing, I actually mentioned this when we did our preview about the things that could come up in Canada's way. And one of the things I mentioned was straight up the bracket, just the luck of the draw and the way it falls. And if you forget, or if no one's looked at the tournament format, the way it works is there's 3 group winners, but the top 2 group winners get seeded in one pot and therefore can't match up until the final, until the gold medal game. So that third best group winner ends up in the same bracket as the top group winner. And I think we can safely assume that top group winner will end up being the U.S. So for Canada, the key will be getting the number 2 overall seed. But if you look at the way the 3 group winners are ranked right now by point differential, this is where Canada, being in the toughest group, could come back to bite them, where you look at, the States are way ahead. You look at Germany's point differential, I think, is at plus 33. And then you look at Canada at plus 17. That's a lot of ground to make up against a tough Spanish squad in their third group game. Now, Spain's not what they, once were. No. But still, when you go in thinking you got to crush them, that's tough. Maybe the hope for Canada is Germany actually loses to France. And so just going 3-0 for Canada gets them that number 2 overall seed. But I think if all 3 teams end up 3-0, I think it's going to be really tough for Canada to get into the top 2. And that means, most likely, if they take care of business, a semifinal matchup with the U.S. instead of a gold medal final.
Will that, though, as the 3?
Yeah. If they wanted to avoid the U.S., and the U.S. is the top overall seed, Canada would either need to be the number 2 overall seed or the best 5? Second place team, I believe. So, that number 3 spot ends up with the top spot. So, it's
not ideal. Again, I don't see a ton of concern with this team when it comes to getting to that semifinal matchup. But again, we're trying to find at the end of the day, this country's looking for a medal. Yeah. And the easiest way to do so is by, of course, avoiding the U.S. until you are not playing them for a medal. You're playing them for which medal you're going to have.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about that U.S. team a little bit.
Ooh, the stories are not on the basketball court.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, they've mostly taken care of business on the court. Everyone was worried after some close calls in the exhibition contest. South Sudan pushed them. Yep. I believe Germany pushed them. Tournament starts, they handle Serbia pretty routinely.
As expected.
Then, in a rematch against South Sudan.
Let's cut to the chase. Let's have the conversation of should U.S. basketball be inviting players that create the best possible roster, or players that they think are the best fit in what their role was going to be for the team? Because obviously Derek White has fit the role that's been given to him perfectly. Like, your casual basketball watcher goes, hey, Derek White wasn't on this team, and then they sent Kawhi Leonard home because of his injury concerns, and then Derek White's on the floor more than Joel Embiid, Jason Tatum, Tyrese Halliburton. Well, there's a lot of reason why Derek White in specific is the guy on the floor more often, is his role defensively, and he just fits in perfectly as a player that fills his role, knows his role, and can play his role. Jason Tatum is not on the floor for a few different reasons. And the main one to me is that he is a guy that over the course of the last few years, where he's been one of the best players in the NBA by playing in an isolation role. And that is not the role you're going to have on this team. I'm not here to say that Jason Tatum doesn't fit well and shouldn't be on this roster, and that someone else that's willing to play a bit more of a role should be in his stead. But I do think that there's something to be said, because the conversations about this team are just never about basketball. Yeah. And I get it. We have to find some way to give this team, these guys, some ammunition, and find some ways to knock them. But I mean, it's just kind of getting out of hand. And I'm very annoyed and don't want to talk about these kind of conversations when I'm much more concerned about, obviously, everything that goes on with this tournament outside of the U.S.
Well, here's what kind of threw a wrench into everything and complicated factors. A guy by the name of Kevin Durant, who was hurt or was recovering from a calf injury through the training camp and exhibition contest, and you were watching the U.S. kind of struggle but still get the job done and win all these games. You know, we talked after they played Canada about how they're bringing Tatum and Bam and AD and all these guys off the bench and Halliburton. It's like, it's almost unfair. And it's like, oh yeah, they still didn't have Kevin Durant. Mm-hmm. And then you reinsert Kevin Durant, who at the international level has probably been the most successful American player ever. And he's obviously going to be, you know, in the starting lineup. He's obviously going to get a lot of the ball. He's been awesome, as predicted, you know, as anyone could have predicted. But that's going to take away a starting spot, minutes, touches, shots from some of the other alphas on this team, Jason Tatum being one of them, because he, you know, plays pretty much the same position as Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
And then you see game 2, and Joel Embiid doesn't play. Now, that could be maybe the resting him, finding. I mean, I don't even like the way Embiid has fit with the team so far. I think it's been a little clunky. Yep. Maybe that's part of it, but still, you're talking about a team that in their tournament opener can go without Jason Tatum and Tyrese Halliburton, then without Joel Embiid in the second game.
Exactly. I think it also is something to keep in mind that they are playing 8 less minutes. Doesn't seem significant to a lot as people, but it is significant when you're rotating through this many bodies.
100%.
Like,
and this many superstars.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to see the floor as often in 40 minutes as opposed to 48. That's not breaking news to anybody.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be.
Yeah. Are you concerned at all about like chemistry? Like, do you think this could actually matter? Because I don't. Like,
absolutely not.
If they lose, it will be because of something basketball related that happened in a 40-minute game where anything can happen, and not because Jason Tatum wasn't happy or Joel Embiid wasn't happy.
We were in the building for the Canada U.S. exhibition game. If you know, shooting like that is apparently possible, because that game was ugly.
Yeah, it was. I think both teams kind of shaking the cobwebs off.
Yeah,
I think both have now, as we've seen through their performances through a couple games. But they are not the only two good teams in this tournament. We talked coming in about how this was probably going to be the deepest, most balanced international men's basketball tournament ever. And I think so far it's lived up to the billing. Which team has impressed you or maybe just intrigued you the most from the field outside of the North American Big Two?
Do you want me to give you intriguing as opposed to challenging these two guys, or do you want to just give you intriguing in general?
It could be intriguing in general.
The Japan-France game was a ton of fun. Like, I love watching. You obviously have the underdog story just in general, but they're such an undersized team that played with a lot of pace. Eventually, France settled down late and figured things out. But I'm forgetting his name. But he was signed by the Grizzlies, like a 5'8" point guard. I'll have to. I have it at the top of my head, but I definitely think that getting to watch some of these underdog matchups where you're watching teams live up to the billing is a ton of fun. The France-Japan game was great to watch.
Yeah, it was. It's been fun all around. I think for me, if we're looking for one team, it has to be Germany. I mean, they are.
It's not like it's. Yeah, you were just going to say it's not like it's that surprising.
No, it's not surprising, but it is impressive.
Yes.
Yeah, they are the defending World Cup champions. So far through 2 games, they have the 3rd best offense in the tournament, the number 1 defense, the 2nd best point differential, as we showed earlier, to the U.S. I mean, this is a team that is just a well-oiled machine. They're comfortable together. They know how to play together. They have enough NBA talent, obviously top-tier talent, but it's not necessarily overwhelming when you think of guys like Schroeder and Tice and the Wagner brothers, but it's a good mix of NBA talent that's more used to the FIBA game. Again, a team that's been together, that's won together, and I think you're seeing it on display. I think if you're looking for a team that can challenge the U.S. or Canada from that European cohort, I think it has to be Germany. And that's not ruling out a France or a Serbia, but you know, if you had to pick one that's playing at a level that I think you could see it being possible, I think it's got to be Germany.
Yeah, I mean, I bring this back to Canada, but Dylan Brooks was commenting on how much he's enjoyed playing the FIBA, like under the FIBA rules, the FIBA game, because it just is so rewarding for him defensively.
100%.
And being able to play with some physicality. So some of these guys that are comfortable playing in that style of game, it can definitely benefit them. And it seems like not just from this year, but obviously years past, that it's been great for Germany too. Yeah,
and I think that's a great point, because if you remember, Luka Doncic caught a lot of flack from NBA fans and American basketball observers when he said, I believe last year, that it's easier to score in the NBA. It was harder to score in Europe. And listen, Luka Doncic is obviously one of the smartest players on the planet. He doesn't mean that the NBA as a whole is an easier game. He just meant specifically when you talk about scoring, and it's for those reasons you kind of just brought up and Dylan Brooks alluded to. They allow the defense to be more physical. They do not reward as much of the foul baiting kind of flailing stuff. The court's a little smaller. The three-point line is brought in. Now, you might say, well, if the three-point line's closer, it's an easier shot, but it actually cramps the floor a little more. And so if you watch in these FIBA games, even though the ball's whipping around and the passing's great and the playmaking and all that, the fluidity is there, but the spacing isn't as spread out as you see in the NBA, which is what makes it so difficult for NBA defenses these days, right? Yep. They have so much more ground to cover. The FIBA game, it's a little more cramped, and you see it, even whether it's a guy like Brooks or the Canadian team in general. The opponents, it looks like they don't have space to breathe. There's always someone there, and I think, it adds to it on the defensive side.
Yeah, that's so interesting to think about when I think about it from the hockey perspective, too. In basketball, we're making the court a little smaller, which is going to reward like the playmaking and skill that you can be able to create in tight spaces. And then in hockey, they open it up, and it kind of does the same thing. It rewards a little bit more skill and creativity in playmaking. So I love the fact that we take this international game and find little ways to tweak it to make it a little bit different, a bit more interesting to watch, because it's not something that we in North America are seeing every day when we're watching the sport too.
Last thing before we get to a little bit of a fun segment at the end. Have you seen anything from these first couple games across the board that has changed your mind in terms of, maybe what you thought your medal predictions were or anything like that?
Is it bad to say? Like, I kind of want to say no.
No, that's fair.
I do think that Germany was the expectation just with their history. I think Australia's, despite the loss to Canada, I do think they've been, like, Josh Giddey's been great, which is, I'm sure Bulls fans are pretty happy about that.
Not a lot for Bulls fans to be happy with, but that is one thing.
Yeah. We could think the Caruso trade, I don't think it was that bad. But for the most part, I think expectations are kind of the same. Like, I didn't really have a high expectations for Greece or Serbia. I know playing through Jokic and Giannis, and for Greece, unfortunately, that's been exactly the case with them. Serbia could be a little bit more interesting, and will be interesting to see if they're through to that quarterfinal matchup. But for the most part, I think met my expectations.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. All right, let's segue a little bit from all this serious Olympic ball talk and end our week off with some fun, with some laughs. And there's no one better to do that with than our guy, Brad Parker. The Scorer's Brad Parker, joining us live from New York. Brad, what's going on, man?
Cash, Tyler, what's up, boys? What's going on?
What's going on with you, man? We brought you on because we wanted you to tell us about some of your recent work and assignments and conversations you had on the ground, because I think they're more interesting than a lot of the conversations we've been having.
Well, I love your conversations, as you guys know. But with that being said, life has pretty much been a movie the last couple of months, and I've needed it for sure. Yes, it's a summer. It's beautiful weather. I'm in New York City. Never a dull moment. But I work from home. I've been working from home since I started at the Score. I don't have the luxury of going into such a gorgeous studio, sitting down with a coworker, looking him dead in the eye, and talking sports. I literally talk to my basketball posters on my wall. It's tough. But listen, I can't complain too much. I'm obviously joking. I've been attending numerous sporting events since, I don't know, Super Bowl happened, NBA All-Star happened, and then there's a little bit of a lull period. It's kind of dead for a little bit, for lack of better terms. And then April rolls around, and I attended the WNBA draft in my backyard at Barclays Center. First time ever doing that. And that was an absolute hit. The women were phenomenal. All the prospects. I was on the red carpet interviewing the Caitlin Clarks of the world, the Angel Reeses, everyone. They were all incredible. So that was fun. And then I was fortunate enough to go to the NFL draft. So back-to-back drafts. A couple weeks later, that was incredible. I was in Detroit, spoke to some fans, met up with Tyler. Finally met Tyler for the first time. Interviewed a bunch of players, a bunch of prospects on the red carpet as well. Interviewed Sketch, the internet phenomenon, of course. And then went back to New York, had a one-on-one opportunity with Breanna Stewart, the superstar for the New York Liberty. Lo and behold, of course, NBA Finals rolls around. It's June. I'm out to Boston, interviewing Mavs, Celtics players, watching the games. That's always incredible. That was my second NBA Finals ever. And then it's June. You know, the end of June comes the NBA draft. but it wasn't really. So I've been to all these events, and you don't. I'm at this phase where I don't become numb to it, but you know what's coming, essentially. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Mr. Worldwide trying to play it down.
A little bit. I hate to say it. I've been doing this for 6 years, minus the COVID year, but you kind of know what's coming at this point. It was kind of a weaker NBA draft. Wasn't too much hype around it. It was the things that happened on the side that, really.
And this is
in my mind.
Yeah, this is where, I needed to ask you, because I know Tyler's a little younger than us, so I'm sure he's still a fan of Kevin Garnett, but not like you and I were, Brad. I know for you and I, Kevin Garnett was for both of us one of our all-time favorites. We both have the vintage Timberwolves, spikes on the back jersey. There it is.
Good.
You had a crazy, cool interaction with Kevin Garnett. Tell us about how that came about. Tell us about how it went, how you came on his radar to begin with.
Do we have his number?
Yeah. Will Kevin Garnett be joining us in studio thanks to you, Brad?
Don't have his number at the moment. He will not be joining us, unfortunately, but I'm not ruling that out for the future. I promise you that. Now, I would love to give you the short story of this. There's no way around it. I got to give you from the beginning. Is that cool?
Do it.
Just for context, I've been the biggest Kevin Garnett fan my entire life. He is one of my goats. He's my favorite player in NBA history. I collect his jerseys, his sports cards, posters, memorabilia, you name it, action figures, like literally everything. Since I was a little kid. Kind of fell in love with the game in '95 when he was a rookie. Didn't really remember him then, but as the late '90s rolled around, became a huge KG fan. I love the number 21. I love the colors, but I love the way, more importantly, he played the game. And that evolved as I got older and understood the game, obviously. Now, fast forward to adulthood, I'm fortunate enough to work in this wild world of sports media. And in 6 years of interviewing athletes, mainly NBA players, I've, humble brag for a minute, bear with me, I've interviewed every NBA player I've ever wanted to. From, D Wade to Shaq to Kobe to everyone. I have never in my life ever had the opportunity to see Kevin Garnett in person, interview him, let alone meet him. I've never been in the same room as him ever in my life. And that was always something that I knew was going to happen eventually, and I knew it would be very special. I knew it would happen one day, but I just didn't know when. And, I was hoping, as we all would when we would meet our childhood heroes, if we ever have the opportunity to, that when I do meet him, he would be as cool as I imagined he'd be. And you know what they say, though? They say, never meet your idols. Someone once said that at one point. So I follow KG's podcast, KG Certified, on Instagram. They made a prompt on their IG story that said, taking fan questions, ask us anything. And side note, I'm a little bit of a basketball trick shot master, if you guys know. Obviously, I make them on the first try every try. Yeah. No editing. I figured, why not throw on a KG jersey, compile my best trick shots, and ask him what he thinks of the trick shots. And long story short, he ended up watching the video on his show alongside Paul Pierce, another guy that I've been a fan of since I was a kid. P was hating the entire time, obviously, in true Paul Pierce fashion, talking about how they're edited or they take a million tries and whatnot. But KG, lo and behold, who has never met me before and does not know who the hell I am, had my back. He shouted me out in the video. He said, mad respect to, anyone that's able to do what I'm doing. And it was pretty wild. And anyway, I posted the video on my IG, sent KG a collab invite on Instagram, even though there's no way he's going to accept. He doesn't know who I am. He has 1 million followers, and he follows like 100 people, less than 100. I'm not one of them. I wake up the next morning. Not only did KG accept the collab, not only did he share the video on his Instagram page, the man hit the follow button. Kevin Garnett. I'm one of 90, 96, 97 people Kevin Garnett follows. Are you kidding me? If 10-year-old Brad saw this, if 10-year-old Brad knew this, freaking the hell out. And bottom line, this was back in late May, early June-ish. Ever since then, we've been friends on Instagram. He's been liking, commenting, and sharing my comment, which has been a pinch me moment every time. And then fast forward a few weeks to the NBA draft, I was invited to interview Darius Miles and Quentin Richardson at a Players Tribune event. And, that would have been cool in and of itself. Grew up watching them. They have great personalities.
Knuckleheads.
You know about that. Knuckleheads, you already know. I interview them. It goes great. Then out of nowhere, Kevin Garnett himself pulls up to the event. And my buddy, thank God for him, who's friendly with KG, he pulled me aside, brought KG over to me, and goes, yo, KG, that's the trick shot guy. KG goes, and I kid you not, he steps back and goes, oh, shit. Gives me a massive hug. We dap, and then we start chopping it up. And he loved the trick shots. He told me to keep grinding. He told me to keep being innovative, which is really, that really stuck out because he noticed I was doing something a little innovative, something a little different in terms of the content, and he appreciated that. And even better, I got that whole video, that whole combo of us talking, I got the entire thing on video.
Awesome.
And I took a pic with it. I took a pic with him. Funniest part though, real quick, watching the video back, I must have dapped this man up 12, maybe 13 times.
That's very in character for KG.
I was just going to ask you, like, you having now done a few things with you were the master of the dap up. Like, is it all about confidence? Are we just experienced because we've been in the game for so long? But you know I've had times where I melted. I actually got engaged a couple weekends ago, and I had a brutal moment with my future father-in-law when I first met him. I was like, nah, I just fumbled the bag. I didn't have any confidence.
Did your future father-in-law try to dap you when you met him?
No, just more like, do you handshake? Do you this? Do you that?
So you know what it is? That's actually a great question. I would say it's literally half and half. It's confidence, but it's also a little nervousness. So essentially, I am not nervous around these guys, and
I can vouch for that from being around Brad
it's impressive.
with athletes around.
We've been on the ground together. I'm really not, but Kevin Garnett, I've been nervous maybe 3 times in my life. Kobe for sure, R.I.P.
Yeah.
D Wade, which I had a crazy experience with back in the day, and then Kevin Garnett. And my nervous tick was essentially me dapping KG up literally 10 to 12 times. And I had to cut some of the daps out of the video because it got to a point where it's like, Brad, what are you doing? KG actually commented on the video saying like daps on daps or something funny like that. And it's half confidence because you need to like take the initiative to go in for the dap and knowing that they're going to reciprocate. Also, you got to get the hug in. So if you do the dap plus the hug, that means that, you're guiding them essentially. Like, what's happening. You can't half-ass that. If they don't go for the hug, that's just
Brad's
awkward.
dap to hug efficiency through the Hoops Hype global rating, Brad Parker, number one.
He's
oh my God, I'm
high
Hall
level.
of Fame numbers.
Yeah, when we're talking about like if we had a dap leaderboard, like all-time leaderboard, you would so be up there. So be up there.
I do love though that KG is exactly who you think he is if you watched him growing up, like the way he plays the game. He's like that in person. I remember we did a fun project with Austin Rivers a few years ago and talked a lot about KG and even some of the stories, which I can't share on this show, but even some of the stories from like him in the locker room and stuff, it's just like, oh yeah, that sounds exactly like what I would assume Kevin Garnett is actually like in real life. So I'm glad that you got to experience that.
As people said, he doesn't always speak to everyone. Like I was a complete stranger to him. He doesn't always take the time to speak to every single person. And he was so genuine, so down to earth. So there was a million people in the room. He was so like locked into our conversation. It was like me and him were the only ones in the room. And I was talking to a person that I've looked up to since I was a child. And he was exactly, if not exceeded the way I thought he would be. Whoever said never meet your idols, I don't want to hear it.
And people will probably watching this be like, oh, what else is he going to say? I can assure you Brad has met some people that he would not say anywhere near the same things that he's saying about KG.
Yeah.
You met a lot of people, Brad.
Without name dropping, absolutely not. Now I'm lucky. I've had more so than not great experiences with these athletes and even some of the bigger name guys. And every now and then, like they could have an off day and like you can't hold it against them, obviously. And I'm not asking these hardball gotcha questions or anything like that. But you never know. Like everyone's human. Everyone's going through things and people are in their feels sometimes. But KG, stellar. Love him. And now we're boys.
So Brad,
you are.
You
by
got
definition.
a major assignment from the Unfiltered Show, and that's to get Kevin Garnett on the show. We believe in you, man. You are one of less than 100. You're one of 97.
I can tell we'll be calling on Brad a lot this season.
Yeah.
If I could deliver on that, I think put me in the rafters.
Yeah, we'll hang your jersey in the studio. Real quick before we let you get out of here, you were also at the WNBA All-Star Game. I know it was your first time doing that event. Quickly let us know what that was like, because I've heard from a lot of people in the media game just how great the WNBA stars are to interact with, how accessible they are, and just I feel like you got a pretty good encapsulation of like the momentum that league has going right now. So just if you can kind of quickly let us know how that went.
Yeah. So this story will not be as long as the Kevin Garnett one. But bottom line, WNBA All-Star was incredible. It was my first one, like you said. And to piggyback on what you said about the accessibility, oh my God, were these superstars next level in terms of personality and outgoingness and just the way they locked into every single question you asked. And I'm not asking like the hardball gotcha questions, but the fun, light touch, interactive questions. They're so much fun. They're all these players, literally nobody wasn't great on camera. Everybody. It was incredible. And it's not media training. They were all genuine themselves. And I actually, one that stuck out real quick, and you guys would appreciate, I had the opportunity to interview Kelsey Plum, one of the faces of the league. And as I mentioned, as you guys know, I'm a big trick shot person. I asked Kelsey who her dream horse opponent would be. She paused. She looked up at me in the middle of a media scrum and goes, shoot, maybe you, Brad. And immediately I'm taken off guard and basically taken back in the best of ways. But I was so ready. So I'm like,
that's great.
I asked her, I said, how do you know I'm a trick shotter? She goes, I could just tell you're a trick questionnaire, which was a hilarious answer on her part. She was like this, they were all like that. Then she went into how she would beat me in horse by shooting just simple shots. And I joked, that's the way to beat me because I don't know how to shoot a simple shot. And she's like, yeah, I could tell. But little did she know, I'm an actor.
Brad brings up Kelsey Plum we had to ask.
We
were gonna ask if you didn't bring it up, Brad. Don't worry.
No, that's great, man.
I jumped the gun.
It looked like a great time. Like I said, I know everything I've heard from other people in the media industry is that that momentum that WNBA has right now is very real, and that the stars in the league are great to deal with, very accessible. So hopefully we'll get more WNBA related content, not just from you, but in general, we'll see more of it. All the stuff we talked about with Brad today, whether it's his Kevin Garnett stuff, his Kelsey Plum stuff, WNBA All-Star in general, the drafts, finals, all that fun stuff. Make sure you go and find it on the Scores Instagram page, the Scores TikTok page, YouTube Shorts page. Obviously, you can find all of our content on YouTube and all the Scores social media channels as well. Appreciate Brad for coming in today to do a little story time with us. Brad, you're a great storyteller, and we'll have you back on, of course. Tyler, congrats on the engagement. You, Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Porzingis, all getting rings this summer. I think that's
you're getting a ring. I'm not getting a ring.
Fair enough. That's coming in October. I feel like that's a good way to wrap up this week. We'll be back probably next week or soon enough to talk about how the Olympic tournament shakes out, see if what we said today comes to fruition or not. Until then, make sure you're subscribed. Make sure to like and subscribe. For Tyler MacKillop, for Brad Parker, I'm Joseph Casciaro. See you next week.